Hello there, my creative peeps. This is our 6th month of 12 months to wholeness through creativity. So welcome to this series where we are making beauty from ashes. As always, there is no artistic skill needed. We're just bringing pieces together to create peace in our lives. We are working on different projects and techniques each month, and just working on these techniques to, number one, be creative as our Creator has made us to be, and also to bring healing and peace in our lives. The creative process is great for everything from reducing everyday stress to healing trauma. Along the way, we're having a lot of fun, as well as creating useful things and sharing those with others to be a blessing to them. So it is finally summertime, and that means it's time to play. So far, our projects have been pretty structured, but we're going to venture out this summer and we are going to play and get messy. I love a quote that Dina Wakley says, if you're playing every day, good things will happen to you artistically and mentally. We have got to let go of our expectations and perfections to just experiment, to try new things, and to practice, because that's the only way we're going to grow as a creative. So let's jump in. This month, we are going to cover some techniques that I've mentioned in past months, but I've not demoed yet, as well as some new things. And we're going to be working on tags. There are many types of tags possible. There are many uses for tags, and we are going to cover several of the ways and combinations for you to experiment with. This is just going to be creative therapy. Just play and see what you get. As Tim Holtz says, you get what you get, so don't throw a fit. We're going to get messy. Not everything you do is going to be lovely. You're going to have some hot messes and even some ugly things, and that is okay. This is about working at our craft and doing the experiment and letting go so that we can grow as a creative. Our tags will have several different uses that we could do with them. We're going to create a lot of them, so you're going to need something to do with them. Of course, they can be used as a gift tag hung on a present that you give to someone else. We can use them in our journals that we made in January. You can journal on the back of them and put them in a pocket or a tuck spot in your journal. You can use them in your Bible journals by writing your prayers or your thoughts about a passage on the back, and then using them as a tip-in or just clipping them in your Bibles. You can use them as bookmarks. You can put them in an art journal as part of your techniques there. You can use them to layer and create other focal points and things in your journals. You can chop them up and use them in other things. And you'll find that that's even one of the techniques that we do for some of those ugly, hot mess ones that we create. We can usually find something good that will redeem our tags, and we can do a lot of different things to fix those uglies. But one thing we're going to focus on this month is creating a tag technique book. And that is, we're going to try a lot of different techniques on tags, and we are going to write on the back of the tag what we did to create this tag, what process we used, how we did it. It's a how-to thing, and then we're going to put these together in a tag technique book. So when we go back and we want to recreate a technique that we've done in the past, we've got a way to go back and look, how did I do that? And remember what we did to create different techniques that we do. Because as you've learned so far, we've only had 5 months and we've learned a lot of different techniques so far. If you've checked my social media pages for Freely Whole Creative, you'll see that there's some other ways that I create booklets for different techniques and products that I have that really help me try to stay in that organized place, because obviously my studio is not always organized because I'm creating in there, and that can get to be a hot mess. And so knowing what I have and what I can do with them is one way to kind of help me keep on track. And those books and these tag booklets are one way of doing that. One way you can put them together, you can just put a book ring through the little holes in the top and just hang them all from a ring that way. Another way that you could put them together is disc bound. That's one way I love to make books, is through the ARC system. Same thing as happy planners that have the ring disc, and you punch the holes in the side for those to go in. The reason I love those is, number one, they're easy to open and turn flat, so you can turn pages, but you can add or subtract pages anywhere, anytime you want. And that's something that's always needed, no matter what type of journaling or writing I'm doing. I always have extra things and extra pages that need to be added in. So that's one that I love to do. Another one that I will show you after we learn a bunch of the techniques is called tab binding. And that's just another way. We learned our stitch binding for signatures. Obviously our tags aren't in signatures, so I'll show you a way that we can bind these together with tabs. So let's get to work on supplies here, I guess, is the first thing we need to look at. And obviously each technique is going to have its own supplies that are needed. So I'm going to cover those individually right before I teach each technique. I'll talk about what's needed for that technique. But obvious, whatever type of technique you're going to use, the first thing you're going to need is the tags themselves. And you can buy pre-made tags. These are the Ranger brand one, which work very well for many of the techniques we're doing, because a lot of the products that I use are from Ranger, so they're very helpful in these. But again, tags aren't always the best substrate. Pre-made tags, just a blank tag for all the different products that we'll be using. Hobby Lobby has their own brand, same thing. Notice I always buy everything on clearance and reduced. But I find the Ranger are a little bit better quality for accepting a lot of the techniques than the others. But pre-made tags are one. Tags come in all different sizes. I will put a link to the standard sizes on the blog post to go along with this. These are number 8, which I find to be a great size for working on most techniques. It's a small enough size that you don't have to do a whole lot of work on it, but big enough that you can show the various techniques. So you could just use plain old cardstock. If you're doing this, I would recommend that you get the 110 pound just office cardstock. Again, this is not made for blendability, for saturation, for holding up underwater, so a lot of your techniques aren't going to work the best on here. Again, experiment. Find what you've got at home and experiment with different things and see how the different techniques work on that. If you get something like this, like I said, your tag sizes do not have to be the standard tag sizes. If I'm working with a sheet like this and I'm not making something in particular, I like to just cut it in even things so that there's no waste, and you'll get tags like this size that are a little smaller than the number 8 ones. They're about as wide, but a little shorter, but hey, they work. And like I said, that's the other thing. You can use whatever size you want. Standard sizes, a lot of them are twice as tall as they are wide, but not always. So, like I said, do what works for you. Different cardstock that is a lot better for handling blending of inks and those types of things is Bristol Smooth. You notice this says 100 pound, but it's still a lot heavier and sturdier than the 110 pound office cardstock is. So Bristol Smooth works good with a lot of these techniques. I forgot to bring in my mixed media stock, which obviously was made for using all these different products we'll be using of inks and stamps and textures and collage and those different things. So mixed media stock is another great one. Watercolor cardstock obviously was specifically made for dealing with wet techniques and watercolor, so it's a great heavier paper that specifically will handle the water a lot better. And last but not least, if you've got just old file folders laying around, cut them up into tag shapes and that'll work about the same as your manila tags there. Again, these were not made to handle the products that we're putting on them, so you may not get the best blends and those types of things out of these things, but definitely play on them, see what you can do, use what you've got at home, and just work at what you've got. You probably are not going to have all of the products that I use to experiment and show you the different techniques. Decide which ones you want to get, which ones you want to experiment with. But I do recommend that you keep experimenting. Don't just do one tag of each unless you do it and decide, I hate that, I don't want to do that again, or there's something I don't want to invest in that product, so I don't want to try that one. But make several and keep working at it and keep growing yourself as a creative in working with these things. We are going to get started with the first technique, which is going to be very easy. It's going to be able to be done with things that you probably already have in your home. I'm going to suggest the brands and ways that I like best, but it will be an easy technique that you can get started with. From there, I'll progress into other things. You'll see that a lot of the things are used over and over, and you'll see that a lot of these things are things that we've already talked about in previous months. So you probably do have some of them on hand if you've been following along every month. I love multi-purpose products. I don't have just products that I use just for this technique or this type of creativeness. I use everything across the board, and I'm sure you've found over the months that we've done so far that I have my favorites that I love to work with, and you'll come up with your favorites too. So, like I said, I may divide this into several videos depending on how long we get. We'll see how many techniques we get, or I may just put it all into one. But gather up your tag material, start cutting your tags if you're not buying pre-made ones, and then get ready to start on our first project.